last week, as I was preparing for this talk, a couple of little musical notes slipped into my head. You know, those kind that you can't really get rid of, they just keep popping up again. And when that happens, for me, it's generally something my subconscious is trying to tell me. So I thought maybe I should listen. So I teased out some of the words of the tune, and then I recognized it as the song we just heard. And of course, Lisa has put her own spin to those words. So thank you so much, Lisa. You may not remember, but that was the theme song for a TV program in the 80s. It was called The Greatest American Hero. So the storyline is that Ralph Hinckley was minding his own business. He was a teacher on a field trip with his high school students when the bus he's driving mysteriously drives itself into the desert. That's the first thing that might be scary. And so he's startled and he's visited by aliens. That might be scary too. And they had decided to endow him with superhuman powers to fight the battle against injustice and crime. And so in order to do this, they gave him a special suit and an instruction manual. That's really all you need is a special suit and an instruction manual, maybe. Well, unfortunately, Ralph managed to lose the instruction manual. Sound familiar? No instruction manual. And basically, he is asked to be a superhero using a special alien suit with powers he can barely understand or control. And that's got to be scary. So that brought me to our monthly theme. This month is Facing the Fear. And then today's talk is, do you have faith or are you had by faith? Do you have faith or are you had by faith? So here are two definitions of faith, one from the Bible and the other from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is from Hebrews 1. That was confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. And from the dictionary, firm belief in something for which there is no proof. So in short, faith is believing in someone or something even when there's no physical proof to back up that belief. And faith is not an exclusively religious term. We have faith in so many things every day. We execute our faith every single day. For example, when you get in your car and you turn the key, we expect the car to start. And if it doesn't, it's a surprise. So we had confidence, assurance, the car was going to start, and everything would just flow from there. We would be able to carry out our plans, which, as we know, we don't always carry out our plans. Or how about when you flick on the switch to turn on the lights? Now, do we know what's happening behind the scenes? I doubt it. Well, several of the engineers on the meeting will know, but actually I don't know. I know electricity comes through wires, but I can't really explain it. I have no proof that that's going to work other than it usually does. And since I know it does, that's more than enough. Scientifically, I understand electricity works. So I trust in the process. I can't see it, I can't define it, but I know it's happening and it works. So we place our faith in countless people and things. We believe our legs will support us so we get out of bed. We believe the brakes will enable our car to stop so we drive. We believe we'll be paid for our work so we show up for the job. When we have faith in something, our behavior is affected and we act out of that faith. So every day we're putting our trust in things we can't see, that we can't define. We trust in intangibles. We have a huge amount of faith in things we can't see, we can't explain, and this faith helps us to glide through life. We get things done, we stay calm, we take stuff for granted, and faith can be a very positive force for good. And Ernest Holmes then argues that faith and fear are two sides of the same coin. So to explain the title, if you are had by faith, then you are coming from fear. You're having faith in something that is not real. For years, I've heard the definition of fear, FEAR, false evidence appearing real. Now, you may hear other things as well, all of them in that same vein, but false evidence appearing real is one that stuck with me. It's like when you scream because you see a snake in the grass and your partner comes out to see what's wrong and it turns out to be a stick or the hose, or when your kid hasn't called you so they think there must be something wrong, but it was their phone, not them that died. So we can choose one or the other, fear or faith, two sides of the same coin. So worrying is like using faith in reverse. By worrying about some future event that may or may not happen, we're asking ourselves to once again have faith in something, and that faith in something we can't see, but it's also something that makes us anxious. And this could lead to a phobia. A phobia is a type of anxiety disorder which involves a persistent and often disabling specific fear of an object or situation. This is the kind of fear that, causes some problems. And, some of the fear is certainly merited, but it's the over the top fear. For example, common phobias. Let me give you some common phobias examples. Okay. Arachnophobia, fear of spiders. Ophidiophobia, fear of snakes. Glossophobia, fear of public speaking. I know a lot of us have that one. Agoraphobia, we've heard about that, fear of public spaces or social situations or travel. Acrophobia, fear of heights. Claustrophobia, fear of confined space. Musophobia, fear of mice. Hadn't heard about that one. Well, I know about it, but I didn't know it had a name. Cynophobia, fear of dogs. Aerophobia, fear of flying, or aquaphobia, fear of water or drowning. This is a real one too. Coulrophobia, that's a fear of clowns. Let me see. Oh, my dog has this. Astrophobia, fear of thunder or lightning. She's afraid of both. Nyctophobia, fear of darkness. Levophobia, fear of objects on the left side of the body. Or there's dextrophobia, fear of objects on the right side of the body. Or auroraphobia, fear of northern lights. Or caliprophobia, fear of obscure meanings. You can go on and on. Thalassophobia, fear of being seated. Substantiaphobia, fear of standing and walking. And phobophobia, fear of being afraid. So, I don't know about you, but I could land in any one of those, and I have at some different times. But that is putting my faith in something that is not real. Something that is, some people can go on top of the Empire State Building and look down. I would not do that. Some people walk out on those transparent platforms seeming like miles in the air. I would not do that. So I know that about myself, but I also know that there is something supporting me in that case. So feeling relaxed or feeling anxious a lot of the time comes down to the ability to believe something unseen. It comes down to that faith versus fear, essentially. Faith in the fact that something good is going to happen. For example, the light's going to go on, or fear that something bad will happen, like the internet will cut out in the middle of the session, or my mute button will be on in the middle of something that I shouldn't be saying. So either way, you have to believe in something you can't see. So faith or fear, fear or faith. So last week, Jean mentioned yoga, but she did not talk about the warrior pose. That's when you stand, one foot behind the other, left arm outstretched, palm facing out, and right hand to the forehead, and ask, am I doing this right? I don't know about you, but I've found myself in that position lately, and I'm not by nature a fearful or anxious person. But this pandemic, yeah, it's kind of rocked my world. There's so much uncertainty about the crisis, and that breeds more fear and worry. And you could read about it for days, and that was just last week's news. So nothing in our lifetime has ever seized us, our nation, our conversations, our thoughts, like this COVID-19 pandemic. the impact on health, families, jobs, economy, the future. It's just a shock to our whole way of lives. And we have a choice on how we get to respond to this. So we can respond in fear or in faith. So that fear and anxiety can eat you up. You know, it can start small, but grow and spread until you're consumed with worry about your safety, your family's safety, your finances, your nation's stability. So we have to have something to believe in. Something to believe in. In Jeannie Gaffigan's memoir, which is When Life Gives You Pears, she says this. She says, I think when I was faced with this situation, like when I was faced with a lot of other really crappy situations, instead of being like, well, why God, why? It was like, oh, I get it. I need a higher power to help me get through this. And what my faith is kind of this belief that this isn't it. There's something beyond this. There's something beyond this. So there's a few things that she suggests. One is figure out what your spirituality is. What can you hang on to that makes it not so dark? So that's what I'm looking at today. What do I hang on to that makes it not so dark? There's something more here, and there's something happening. And so I look around, I say, what is it that I need to be learning here? So we have to intentionally feed our faith and starve out the fear, believe it or not. So we can choose to believe in an unseen outcome that's good and relaxing, like the brightest minds are working on a vaccine and that will succeed, or science knows how this works and how to do it, and that there's something behind each and every scientist that is guiding them and directing them and knowing the truth. So there's that. Or I can believe in something that's not so good and anxiety inducing, like earlier we thought, well, I might run out of toilet paper. Oh. Or right now it's the canning lids. There's not enough canning lids because people have in faith planted gardens, and now they have an abundance, just like nature always responds with that abundance. And now they want to can it, but where are the canning lids? So guess what? You get to share. Instead of canning something to keep for yourself, you get to share it with your neighbors. So it's a choice. Trust and faith require that we believe that we're big enough, brave enough, strong enough to handle whatever it is the outcome. Now, so we have to have this brave faith. And we are strong enough to handle this. Worry is that fear of events unseen. It robs us of joy in the present and actually makes us less able to handle what comes up. If we're going to believe in something we can't see or know for sure, let's choose faith over fear every time. Martin Luther King tells us faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. And faith is not bargaining or begging or manipulating or pleading. It's that calm knowingness that all is well, no matter what the human condition. That calm knowingness. So faith looks beyond the fact to that which is, to a knowingness of the goodness of God. And faith is not superstition. It doesn't require rituals or dogma or magic to be achieved. Khalil Gibran tells us this. He says, faith is a knowledge within the heart beyond the reach of proof. So there are some things that you just know. And you don't know how you know it, but you know it. So that knowingness, that faith in divine spirit, and faith that basically, regardless of your belief system, regardless of what you believe, but faith in divine spirit is able to cause surprising positive effects. Regardless of religion, that people experience the same benefits from having faith. For example, In particular, believers have longer lives, lower blood pressure, lower rates of anxiety and depression. But faith isn't something we turn on and off. It isn't something we tune into. It's the very essence of who we are. It's the very essence of who we are. So if you have the faith of God, you're coming from the knowingness that there's only one power and all is possible through that one power. One power, one presence, one infinite source. One power. So God does not have faith. God is that infinite knowingness. The only faith that God has is the faith that we, as incarnations of spirit, align with. I have faith that that clock is going to stop very soon, because it always does. Take a breath. As Ernest Holmes writes, in order to have faith, we must have a conviction that all is well. And in order to keep faith, we must allow nothing to enter our thought which will weaken this conviction. So faith is built up from belief, acceptance, and trust. Whenever anything enters our thought which destroys in any degree one of these attitudes, to that extent, faith is weakened. That's from the Science of Mind textbook, page 158. So faith in knowing. Faith does an interesting dance with knowing. When we see that our faith is rewarded with manifestation, it allows our faith to become knowing. So I think as practitioners, one of the assignments is to keep track of your demonstrations. Keep track of the demonstrations that happen from your prayers, from your treatments. And that really helps build on your faith. And that faith becomes just a knowing. So when you work with a practitioner, there is an absolute knowing that all is well. All is well. Absolute. So knowing is faith that has become supercharged. Now, just on a long trail, a long walk, life sometimes gets a little tough and it can even be scary. And that's why it helps to have friends and spiritual community like this one. Science of Mind can help us keep our equilibrium, help us keep our feet on the ground, and reminds us that when the going gets hard, that within us, which is strong, resilient, capable, that is always present. So faith is not static. It requires practice. We have to build up our faith muscles through spiritual practices when things are going well in life, so that when we hit a crisis, those practices are second nature. And these spiritual practices can include prayer, meditation, affirmation, music to remind us of the truth. So during these last few months, I have been part of a morning meditation. It's 7 a.m. Here in Austin. And so every morning we meet and we have a meditation. And it's really been grounding and centering for me. And if you're interested in that and would like to join it, then just please let me know and I will send you an invite. But it's been something that's been grounding. So the spiritual practice, it requires practice. And for example, in a time of uncertainty, when everything around is changing, new developments every day, rising numbers, changing guidelines, oh, the whole world is upside down. You can light a candle to remind yourself of the grounding in faith. So in the midst of all of that, we wrap ourselves in the warm light of a familiar flame. And a reminder that the strength that emerges when we come together in community, and a reminder that that light is always within us. Some people may say the 23rd Psalm. There was a Sunday school teacher who decided to have her young class memorize the 23rd Psalm. And she gave the youngsters a month to learn the verses. Should be long enough, right? Little Bobby was excited about the task, but he just couldn't remember. And after much practice, he could barely get past the first line. And so on the day that the kids were scheduled to recite the 23rd Psalm in front of the congregation, Bobby was really nervous. And when it was his turn, he stepped up to the microphone and he said proudly, "The Lord is my shepherd, and that's all we need to know." Now that is faith. Another practice comes from Emma Curtis Hopkins, and Rainbow mentioned this a couple weeks ago, to look up. And she based that on, Emma Curtis Hopkins based that looking up on Psalm 121:1. I will lift up my eyes unto the hills from whence cometh my help. And so the practice is to look up, not lying in bed looking up, but just look up with your eyes, lift up your eyes, and try that for about 10 minutes. I tried it the other day when I was feeling particularly sad. It's like, oh, yes, it happens even to me. And so I decided, well, I'm going to do this practice. I'm going to look up. And it changes things. And then what do you do if you find your faith wavering? Well, you treat for faith. You treat for faith. Mark 9:4. Lord, I believe you. Help thou my unbelief. So we treat for faith. Or you borrow faith. Mary Morrissey talks about the time when she was introduced to New Thought. She was awaiting surgery, and a chaplain came to her and asked if she believed that she could be healed. And it was like, I don't know. And so the chaplain suggested, you can borrow my faith. And so we can borrow faith. And that's partly what we do with a practitioner. So we practice faith. It's not something we have and forget about. Faith operates every day. We know we're practicing when we respond to the world with love and compassion. And so more importantly, what does that faith look like in the world? What does it look like when it's actualized? So faith moves mountains. Faith without works is dead, which means faith is not passive, but it's active. It's active faith. It's vibrant. And it's an active demonstration of the divine showing up in, through, and as us. Your life is an example of your faith. By living a life of faith, we demonstrate the power of faith, and we are beacons for others to follow, a light in the darkness. Ernest Holmes, also from Science of Mind, says, if one will have faith in himself, faith in his fellow men, faith in the universe and in God, that faith will light the place in which he finds himself. And by the light of this faith, he'll be able to see that all is good. And the light shed by this faith will light the way for others. We become conscious of the darkness only when we're without faith. For faith is ever the light of our day and the light on our way, making that way clearly visible to us, even when to others it may be beset with obstacles and ongoing roughness. I like this line where he says, the light shed by this faith will light the way for others. And I am in gratitude for those who had faith before I came along, because it lit the way for me. And so I think now, who are we lighting the way for? So this is a faith that emphasizes love and respect for ourselves as a foundation, and it's a faith that uncovers our connection to others, rather than saying anyone is separate or apart. It's an inner quality that unfolds as we learn to trust our own deepest experience. And so we move from having faith to a way of being faith, and allowing that knowingness of spirit to be all that we are, that knowingness of spirit to be all that we are. Because we are metaphysicians and our call is 24 hours a day. So a true story. This comes from a Catholic magazine, and it was September 8th, 2020, so not very long ago. So when Jimmy McDonald found himself floundering in the waters of Lake George in New York, next to his tipped kayak, he thought he might die. He'd been enjoying a relaxing August day on the lake with his family, meditating, snapping pictures. He kept his life jacket in the boat. He didn't think he would need it. But his kayak ended up drifting and suddenly found himself far from shore and from his wife and stepchildren. And despite the rough waters, he still thought he could make it back to shore. So he waved on several boats that had stopped to offer help. But when his kayak tipped and his hastily donned life jacket came up to his ears, he knew he was in real trouble. I thought I was going to die. I was absolutely powerless and wished I had asked for help earlier. I was waving my hand and asked God to please help me, he said. And God answered his prayers, but not in the form of Jesus walking on the water. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw the tiki boat. So, aboard the floating bar boat were seminarians and priests of the Paulist Fathers from St. Joseph's Seminary in Washington, D.C. The Catholic religious community had been on a retreat nearby and were taking a break on a boat rented from Tiki Tours. So a handful of the seminarians and priests helped the Tiki Tour staff hoist McDonald to safety. Now, I know this sounds very much like it's made up, but it's really true. So Noah Ishmael, one of the seminarians aboard the boat, told NBC Washington that it was a movement of the Holy Spirit that they happened upon McDonald at the right time. And Chris Milano, another seminarian, told WNYT that as Paulist seminarians, they are missionaries. And that day, that was our mission, to be present and to help someone in need. McDonald told WNYT that he took the rescue as a sign from God that his life still had purpose on earth. And he also added that he found the rescue funny in an ironic sense. McDonald's an addict in recovery who counsels others through addiction recovery. How funny it is that I've been sober for 7 years and I get saved by a tiki. So this week, our charge is to practice kindness with everyone you meet. And in the end, faith is about surrender, letting go, and knowing. Letting go and simply knowing. And so I invite you to say with me the affirmation, again, that we had earlier in today's lesson. Let's say this together. I surrender into the grace of the one, knowing I am divinely guided in all I do. Oh, I'm going to say it again. I surrender into the grace of the one, knowing I am divinely guided in all I do. I don't know about you, but that's really my lesson for today. So let us just take this into prayer right now, right here, into the knowingness that God is all there is. There's one power, one presence, one infinite source. We are all connected in that. There is nobody set aside. There's no spot where God is not. There's nothing happening that is not divine. And so I look for that divine in everything. Everything that's happening, I look for the divine. I look for the gift. I stay in the present. And that lifts me. It supports me. It lights my way. I follow the light from those who have come before, and I shine the light for those who come after. There's only one of us. It is God. It is good. I rest in that knowing. I trust it. I have faith in it. It is how it is. And join me by affirming this by saying together, and so it is.